a fragile yellow relic tucked in a British museum, a million-pound titan shaking the earth in America. The legends that made this list aren't just rare, they rewrote what trains could be and nearly vanished forever. But why did only a handful survive, and what secrets did others take to the scrapyard? These 10 locomotives changed the world. Their stories prove it. Let's begin where modern railways truly started. In 1829, a small yellow locomotive called Rocket lined up at the Rainhill Trials, a contest to decide the future of Britain's railways. Designed by Robert Stephenson, Rocket faced off against rival engines and the old idea that only stationary machines could move trains over long distances. Its secret was inside, a multi-tube boiler using dozens of narrow fire tubes instead of a single large flue. This design let Rocket raise steam faster and more efficiently than anything before. Exhaust steam shot up the chimney, pulling air through the fire and boosting power every time the pistons moved. On the test track, Rocket averaged about 12 miles per hour and hit speeds close to 30 miles per hour, leaving competitors in the dust and proving that self-propelled locomotives were the way forward. Today, the original Rocket survives in the United Kingdom's National Collection, a fragile, much-altered relic, but still the blueprint for nearly every steam engine that followed. In 1954, British Railways unveiled number 71,000 Duke of Gloucester, a prototype meant to lead a new generation of express steam. Its heart was the Caprati valve gear, a high-tech rotary system promising efficiency at speed. But design shortcuts and flawed drafting left the Duke underpowered and coal-hungry, quickly earning it a bad reputation. As diesel took over, this one-of-a-kind Pacific was withdrawn and dumped in Barry Scrapyard, where most engines met the torch. Few believed it was worth saving, yet a small band of volunteers saw potential where others saw scrap. They formed a trust, raised funds, and spent decades rebuilding the Duke from the ground up, fabricating missing Caprati parts, redesigning the exhaust, and correcting the original engineering mistakes. When number 71,000 finally steamed again, it delivered the performance its designers had only dreamed of. The Duke stands today as proof that passion and persistence can rescue not just a locomotive, but an idea. Southern Pacific 4449 began life in 1941, gliding along the California coast in its bold orange and red daylight paint. After diesel engines took over, the locomotive was retired and donated to Portland, where it sat for years as a forgotten park display, with windows smashed, paint faded, and parts missing. In the early 1970s, a group of volunteers and city leaders saw something worth saving. When America's bicentennial celebration needed a steam engine to pull the American Freedom Train, Portland offered up their battered relic. Over the course of a year, local crews and railfans worked day and night at the Brooklyn Roundhouse, overhauling every inch until 4449 was ready for the spotlight. In 1975, it rolled out in red, white, and blue, hauling a rolling museum across the country. Today, 4449 is the only surviving GS4, cared for by Portland's preservation community, a living reminder of what can happen when a city refuses to let its history rust away. Behind the Iron Curtain, railway engineers faced a new kind of challenge, proving that steam could still compete in an era obsessed with speed. In the early 1960s, the Deutsche Reichsbahn needed a locomotive that could push passenger cars to their limits, so they built something no one else had, a hybrid machine called 1821. Its frame and wheels came from an old Baden Pacific, but the heart was a brand new high-pressure boiler styled after the sleek Class 61. 3 cylinders, massive 2.3-meter driving wheels, and a streamlined body gave it the look of a racing thoroughbred. On test runs between Halle and Berlin, 1821 clocked just over 180 kilometers per hour, about 112 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest steam locomotives to ever remain in service. Every trial was a statement. Even as the world turned to diesel and electric, East German crews were still chasing the limits of steam. In the early 1980s, South African Railways handed British engineer David Wardale an aging Class 25 NC and asked a simple question: how much more could steam deliver? Wardale's answer was the Red Devil, an experiment in late-era efficiency that rewrote the rules of combustion. He fitted the locomotive with a Lempor exhaust, carefully tuned to draw hot gases through the firebox with minimal back pressure, and he introduced a gas producer combustion system that burned coal more completely. The changes were not just theoretical. Test runs showed coal and water consumption dropping by as much as 30% compared to an unmodified Class 25 NC. The Red Devil could outpull diesels on mountain grades, using less fuel than any steam engine in Africa. Yet management, already committed to dieselization, kept it a class of 1. Today, number 3450 stands as proof that even in steam's twilight, a single reformer could squeeze new life and remarkable efficiency out of old iron. When the Chesapeake and Ohio H8 Allegheny rolled out of Lima in the 1940s, it wasn't just another locomotive, it was an industrial event. Each Allegheny could deliver more than 7,500 horsepower at the drawbar, enough to muscle coal trains over the steepest grades of the Appalachians. Locomotive and tender together tipped the scales at roughly 1.2 million pounds. Out of 60 built, only 2 survive, number 1601 at the Henry Ford in Michigan and number 1604 at the B.O. Railroad Museum in Baltimore. Moving these giants into their final homes became a feat of engineering in itself. Museum crews laid special track, reinforced floors, and used winches, jacks, and heavy cribbing to inch these machines into place. They treated every foot of progress like a delicate operation. Standing beside an Allegheny, you don't just see a locomotive, you feel the weight of steel, power, and the human effort it took to preserve something this massive. In 1934, a Green Pacific thundered down the East Coast Main Line and made history. LNERA 34472, better known as Flying Scotsman, became the first steam locomotive in Britain officially authenticated at 100 miles per hour. But speed was only part of its legend. For decades, Flying Scotsman hauled the Premier Express from London to Edinburgh, its nameplate and silhouette becoming icons far beyond the railway world. When British Rail retired the engine in 1963, Alan Pegler stepped in, pouring his own fortune into rescuing and restoring it, determined to keep the celebrity locomotive alive. Scotsman's story did not end at home. Pegler shipped it to North America, hoping to fund its future with a transcontinental tour. The dream ended in bankruptcy and the engine was stranded, but that only deepened its myth. Later, under new owners, Flying Scotsman crossed Australia and set a world endurance record, 422 miles non-stop from Parkes to Broken Hill. Now owned by the National Railway Museum, overhauled and running excursions. Flying Scotsman still draws crowds wherever it goes, a living symbol of steam's golden age and the stubborn will to keep legends on the rails. On the morning of July 3, 1938, a streamlined blue locomotive thundered down Stoke Bank, south of Grantham. LNERA 4, number 4468, Mallard was at the head of a 7-coach train with Sir Nigel Gresley's test crew riding behind in the dynamometer car. The mission was to push steam speed as far as it could go. As Mallard crested the summit, the driver opened the regulator wide. The train gathered pace, wheels pounding out a rhythm that grew faster with every mile. The dynamometer car's paper trace captured the moment. 116, 119, 122, then a flick to 126 miles per hour, an instant that rewrote the record books. The crew felt the heat rising from the bearings, metal screaming at the edge of its limits. Mallard's middle big end ran hot, but the record was set. The official 5-second average landed at 125 miles per hour. The world remembers the 126 miles per hour. Today, Mallard stands silent in York, a static exhibit crowned with a speed plate no other steam locomotive has ever matched. Union Pacific Big Boy 4014 is more than a locomotive, it's a moving monument to human ambition. Stretched out at over 130 feet and weighing more than 1 million pounds with its tender 4014 dwarfs almost anything else on rails. Only 25 Big Boys were built, and just 8 avoided the scrapper. For decades, the idea of one ever running again seemed impossible, a fantasy for rail fans and engineers alike. But in 2013, Union Pacific's steam program made a decision that stunned the world. They would reclaim 4014 from its quiet display in California and bring it back to life. The journey began with a careful tow, inching this steel giant across hundreds of miles to the steam shops in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Over the next 6 years, a dedicated team tore down, inspected, and rebuilt nearly every part, swapping out coal for oil and blending 1940s engineering with modern safety systems. In 2019, after more than half a century silent, 4014 thundered back to life under its own power. Today, it stands alone as the only operational big boy, living proof that with enough vision and grit, even the largest legends can be reborn. Right now, fewer than 30 mainline steam giants still run worldwide, and that number is shrinking every year. As technology races ahead, These locomotives remind us that preserving history is an active choice, not an accident. Their survival depends on what we protect today. Which engine would you fight to save?